All right, I'm back, and joining me through the power of the internet, Joe Giacalone. Joe, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me back.
You know, I've introduced you, of course, before the show here, and you've been on the show before. You're no stranger to the show, but just take a second and kind of remind us who you are and what do you have going on currently. I know you're retired from New York City homicide, and you've got all that fame, but what are you doing now that's keeping you so busy? You're retired, but you actually work harder now.
Yeah, certainly. I've been very fortunate, but like I said, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I've been out about over 4 years now from the New York City Police Department. I had many different jobs in there. One of them, like you said before, I was the commanding officer of the Bronx Cold Case Squad, responsible for the entire county, upwards of about 12,000 open homicides just in the Bronx alone. And currently, I am an adjunct professor at Joe College of Criminal Justice in Manhattan. I've been there this January. Was 11 years. So I've been doing that. I just finished the third edition of my textbook, The Criminal Investigative Function, a guide for new investigators. And I've been contracted to write 2 more textbooks this year, one on police patrol and then one about getting started in your law enforcement career. So I got a lot of writing to do.
Yeah, well, that's nice. And you do have the Criminal Investigative Function. I have a copy of it, the third edition. I have the second edition as well. It's a great book. And you mentioned it, mentioned it as a textbook. And I do see where it is a textbook. It can be used in a class. But the way you wrote it, Joe, it's real easy for someone to actually read the book and go through there and learn a lot, not in a classroom. I mean, it can be read as a self-study, but yes, I could see how an instructor could use it as well. So, you've done very good at that. And there are some points in here that I want to bring out, before we actually talk about the book much more, but there's some points in here that I really found interesting. Now, there's this book being a criminal investigative process. It talks about the entire process of criminal investigation. So, if you're in the detective business, that's great. If you're just in the death investigation or just medical legal death investigator, some of this may be good knowledge, but you might not necessarily be using all of this in your job. But there are some aspects here that are really good. As I mentioned to you in the email that I want to talk about, was his qualities of an investigator. You have several here, and I'll remind you got persistence, determined, communicator, oriented toward details, and prepared. Now, obviously, you took time to write that, but is that something that you truly believe in? And let's talk about those just for a minute.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the reason why I had put together this book is because for years I was teaching criminal investigations classes, and I was always complaining about the textbooks. How they never really teach anybody how to do anything. It's all pretty much encyclopedic. So I guess my colleagues got tired of hearing me complain, so they said, "Well, write your own." So I took it as a challenge, and I did so. So yes, I mean, just like I wrote the book, just like I did my police work, you can't be. You have to go forward. You got to do everything you can to solve this case. I mean, the police department, whether you're in the detective squad or, like I said, I was in the cold case squad, you're that last liaison between the family and the public. You can't let them down. You're the last person. You are the last person that this family is going to interact with and see. So that's why you have to be persistent. You can't give up. And there are so many obstacles that get in your way when you're trying to solve a case, whether it's a lack of evidence at a crime scene, whether it's people who don't want to cooperate with you, like, the no snitching rules and everything like that. If it's prosecutors who demand even more and more evidence as you go along. I always just, joke around that they wanted the Pope and 3 nuns in every one of your cases, So those are the kind of obstacles that you have to keep on either going over, under, or around. But you just can't stop. And that's why I said you have to be determined. You got to be persistent. And that's where those two come in. And I firmly believe that. If you're going to be somebody who can't finish things, you start it, you kick the can around a little bit, and then you go on to something else. This really isn't a career for you. You have to try to, when you pick this case up, this is from beginning to end and everything in between. And you don't stop until it's a successful prosecution. Even if you make an arrest, your case is not over until this thing goes to trial. I mean, so you have a lot of obligations to do, a lot of I's to be dotted, T's to be crossed, and a lot of reports to be written. If it's not documented, it was never done.
Right. And of course, persistent and determined are the first part of that acronym. And, even as a medical legal death investigator, persistency and determination goes a long ways. As a police detective, of course, you've got to have all of those to initially get the call. get the case, and then you've got to work it through all of its system, and I've been on that side of the fence, the whole being up 2 or 3 days at a time with an hour sleep here or there or whatever. We have to have that. But as a medical examiner or investigator, maybe you're going to the scene, you're doing your body exam, the transport goes back to the morgue, and you get another call and do that. But you have to be persistent there as well. Do you have the interviews? Do you have medical records? What do you do? Persistence and determination. And I like what you said there about if you don't have that, then you're in the wrong career. If you're in investigations of any kind, police, medical, legal, whatever, you got to be persistent and you got to be determined. I believe once you lose that, Joe, I think you'd agree it's time probably to get out. If you're lackadaisical and you avoid the phone calls and avoid the work, you're not doing yourself or the families any good.
Right. If you have always something better to do, something that's going to take your place, whatever's trying to start another career. I see a lot of cops do this, and it just can't happen that way. It just life has to go on. You have to sacrifice a lot of things, and and as cops we know that we sacrifice a lot. But if you're going to get involved in the death investigation business, you have to put everything else on hold because that's your job. Like I said before, you are the last liaison. That's it. There is no more.
That's right. And they never make appointments. You try to get these people to make appointments on their death, but they never do. It doesn't matter that doesn't matter that it's the birthday party. It doesn't matter that it's Christmas morning. They die when they die. And if you happen to be the one taking the calls that day, you're just out. And I've jokingly said, I just wish these people would make appointments. But then when they do that, it's a whole different kind of investigation, I guess. So
yes, certainly.
With this communicator, what do you mean by communicator? Very, very communication is key in investigation. But what do you mean by it?
Okay, yeah, you have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to smooze people, so to speak. Get information from people who are unwilling to give it to you. Get the cooperation. But I've seen people make mistakes where they're cursing, they're yelling, they're screaming. I mean, if you think you're going to get anything out of somebody, if you think someone's going to share a secret with you and you're going to talk to them, you're going to talk down to them, you're going to treat them badly, I mean, you're once again, you're in the wrong business. So you have to understand something. Being able to choose the right words or ask the right questions can mean all the difference between you closing a case and not closing the case. And for me, it's always been the fact that I've always tried to learn how to craft my questions right, ask the right questions. And how many times I think every investigator could say after about a half an hour talking to somebody, they finally say something and the person gives them the answer they were looking for. You say, well, how come when I asked you this a half an hour ago, you didn't give it to me? And they say, well, you didn't ask me that. So yes, sometimes you have to be very specific, and sometimes you have to be able to put that frustration behind you. And, you're dealing with all kinds of people having, good people having bad days too. And you have to remember that. So not everybody you deal with is a bad guy. And sometimes as cops, I always make the joke that if we were waiters, we'd all starve to death if we had to, rely on getting tips to pay our bills, because many of us don't know how to talk to people.
That is a very, very good way of put it. You're right, because if we had to rely on tips, I think in many times in my life, I'd probably be broke as well. But, communication starts not only with the suspect, but with the family, because you're on the scene and you've got to get information from them. And we're not always, we're not always like, number one, their loved one has died, but number two, we're the authority, and maybe the family doesn't like authority figures. But I like what you said there, where it's kind of like get more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
Sure.
I've always been a proponent of being nice to people until such time that I can't be nice anymore because of safety or if I have to control a situation. But yelling and screaming and cussing does no good. Now, even if they're doing that, I understand there are times you have to maybe jump in and take control. But once you've got the control taken, go back to being nice. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're working on, being that communicator. Also, part of communicating is listening. And communicating 101, we've all heard it, right? We've been in every class about communication. But listening is the key. Sometimes we like to ask questions and we're thinking about the next question we're going to ask, and we're not really listening to the answer. I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm a big proponent of statement analysis. I make sure that you weigh every word that somebody is using, because most of the time they're using them for a reason. Either they're trying to convince you of something, they're trying to omit something, and it's extremely important. And even in the book, I do a whole like a half a chapter on active listening and how important that is in the communication process, because how many times have you, you're doing something out on the street and then you go back to the station house 2 hours later and then all of a sudden something just hits you and say, I cannot believe I missed that. Or, you were listening to, the rewinding the video and you're watching something, you're watching an interview and you're like, I can't believe I missed that. Well, I can believe you missed it because you weren't listening. Like you said, you were preparing for the next question or somebody interrupted you. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, I know on TV and sometimes even in real life, we have the tag team match, right? The tennis team where two detectives are asking the person the same question and they don't know who they ask. Listen, it's one person talks at a time. The other person, I always say, is like children, right? You're seen and not heard. And you'll get your chance to be, to speak, but, don't interrupt the person who's doing the initial interview.
Right. And just even on something like this, just on these shows, I have to be careful because this isn't an investigation, but I have to be careful because I know I want to ask another question, but sometimes I'm not listening to my guest. I'm not listening to you. And then I've caught myself like, wait a minute, I'm getting ready to ask a question. Did he just answer that? Because what am I doing? I'm not listening to you. I'm waiting for you to get done talking. That's how we do with suspects or with family. We're waiting for them to be quiet so we can ask a question. But when you ask a question, you realize, oh, wait a minute, they just answered the exact same thing in their answer to the last one. And the listening part also is to be able to restate to them what you know or what you've heard. And in in-depth investigation, it's important because we have to summarize that, and that leads us on to our next, whether you're medical legal or whether you're police. When you leave that house, what's your next step? And if you've not heard or listened to what they've told you, then you could be wasting hours of time because you've not listened. And I think we've all done that. But that goes back to the next section here on this acronym is oriented towards details. Part of the listening is paying attention to the details. Now, I know you have more explanation on that, but what do you mean by oriented to the details?
Okay, yeah, there's actually two aspects of this. One is like you think about it when you first arrive at a crime scene and you have to do all these little interviews with everybody, the first officer on the scene, the EMS workers, and listening to bits and pieces of different people's stories. Then you're talking to witnesses. You're trying to gather that information so you can have that initial. Think about this: as a case investigator, you now have to debrief everybody else about what's happening. So that's why you have to make sure that you are listening and getting those little details down, so that when people go off onto their canvases and knocking on doors, they actually know what they're talking about. The second aspect of the oriented toward details part is your observation skills about, and these are the kind of things you also need to ask questions of other people. Like first officer on the scene, who did you see when you first said? Did anybody see any cars driving by? Did anybody become overly helpful? Did you get any names? Did you detain anybody? Like once again, if you don't ask these questions, people don't volunteer this information. So that's another issue about being inside the crime scene, looking for certain things that are either there or not there, things that should never be there. So this is the kind of detail orientation that detectives must have. It's about observation skills mainly. And, the nice thing about it is that you can actually improve both of these by actually doing it. So you don't need to be born with these skills. You can learn how to do this, and you just have to put it up to yourself about how I'm going to be a better listener, how I'm going to learn how to ask better questions, and how I'm going to be more observant. I mean, there are plenty of things that you can do.
Right, and some of that includes taking notes on the scene, whether it be handwritten notes or digital notes, so you can refer back to that. And you talked about the scene details itself. One of the things about a scene assessment, and I teach a lot about scene assessment, not necessarily about scene reenactment, but scene assessment. When you get into a scene, stand there for just a second and look around. What looks right? What doesn't look right? What's been put in or taken away. If you just will stand there and let everybody get out and just stay quiet for a minute, you can see a lot of things. Your mind starts putting things into place because you're assessing that scene. That's being detail oriented. We as investigators sometimes want to rush in. We got 5 things to do, and then we rush out. But we missed the big elephant in the room because we were so focused on these 5 things. Sometimes it's just stopping and looking around. I've went to crime scenes where I've gotten everybody out and I brought a chair in, set a chair in the middle of the floor, and I've sat there for 15, 20 minutes just looking around, making notes. It's amazing what you'll find. A picture is on the wall or not on the wall. Something is out of place. What used to be on this table? It looks like there's dust here, but what used to be here? People forget that because they don't look around. That's details.
Yep.
You know the details. Now you can start finding, when you find evidence, it'll match those details. But if we rush in and rush out, whether it be medical, legal, or police, we will miss them. And of course, lastly in this acronym is prepared. We have to be prepared for the investigation. And I also want to say we have to be prepared mentally as well as prepared, not just physically, but prepared to do our job. We also have to be prepared with our equipment and mentally. Would you not agree?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. You got to have the right equipment, your flashlights, your business cards, your cell phone, all those things that you take for granted sometimes, you know, or something happens and you just run out of the station house. You know, you can have a go kit or whatever it is, so that you have a brand new notebook every time you go out to the scene. You have a pen that works. I mean, these are all the things you say, oh, come on, Joe. I've seen it 100 times. How many people go out there and you don't have a pen? You know, or, you know, sometimes it's just mind boggling. And it's just based on different individual people. Who's really always prepared and who's over prepared and who's never prepared. That's basically what you're dealing with. So having the foresight to be able to, you know, get ready to go, you'll actually do a better job once you arrive there because you'll feel as if you're ready. It's like studying for a test the night before. You walk into that day, you're very confident. And confidence is a big emotional part of you helping solve the case too. Being confident is something I always say, you know, the old Henry Ford thing, right? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And this has a lot to do with law enforcement and your investigating scenes, because if you're thinking that you have that defeated attitude going in, either the crime scene or an interrogation room, I'm never going to get this. This guy's never going to confess. He's been arrested 100 times. You're right. You're never going to get it.
Right, because you've preset your mind to that. And part about being mentally prepared, not just having your business cards, your ink pens, your notebooks, which, you know, we're joking about that, but not really joking, because there are people that don't have that. You know, a lot of us investigators, like you call it a go kit or a go bag, we do have something that has most of our basic equipment in it. The rest of it may be coming in the van. We may have a trunk full of stuff, but we do have something we carry with us. But I also believe we need to be mentally prepared for what we're going to see. It's one thing to get to a call where grandpa died overnight in his bed. That's fine. There's a lot of people upset. That's fine to deal with that. What about the call where the child has been hit by a stray bullet? Or what about the call where a young mother was found dead on the couch with a needle in her arm, and then there's two kids in the house? Where are they going to go? You know, those are the things that we might say doesn't affect us mentally, but over the time and over the years, and you spent years working New York homicide. And I know you might think, well, it's New York, so what? To the rest of the world, it's New York, okay? It's the home of Donald Trump, for goodness sake. Can we say that now that we're on this political?
Apparently, yes.
But the thing is, New York City, right? That's a big place. It's you know, it's not Philadelphia. It's not St. Louis. It's New York. And so there's some prestige with that. But even there, you've seen some of these cases that are really bad cases. And I'm sure you've seen officers washed out because they have not taken control of their mental health.
Well, yes. I mean, and everybody has a problem with that in the respect that as police officers, we know that we can't show any signs of weaknesses to the people we work with. So they're reluctant to come forward. The job itself could be very damaging to you, right? If you went to the job and said, hey, I'm having these problems, I'm not sleeping at night, you know, next thing you know, they remove your firearms from you and your livelihood. And so people don't want to come forward. You know, I know they try to do different things where it's anonymous. They try to do, but you know what, there's sometimes just not enough push in that respect to get people the help that they need. And it's a real problem everywhere in the country, whether if you're in New York or you're in Sheboygan, right? I mean, it's just, it happens every day. And, you know, police officers, many of them, you know, do their job and not have any of these ill effects. And then there's other people that do. So it's really about personality. It's really about being able to, you know, separate the really bad from the bad, not even the good, right? I mean, so you know, nobody ever calls the cops unless there's something bad going on. It's not like the firemen, right, where they rescue the cat out of the tree and help out people, that kind of stuff. But when the cops are on the scene, there's always something bad. So yeah, it's something that you have to think about, and it weighs on people's persona for sure.
Right, and always, you know, have somebody you can talk to, have something to where you can have a debriefing or something like that. And I know there's some cases we can't talk about the people, but we just need to know that mental health is important, you know. And, you know, you joke, we all joke about the firemen getting cats out of a tree. However, a couple of months ago, I actually did hear our dispatch being sent to a residence to get a cat out of a tree. They really did. It was an older lady. Her cat got out. they went and got out of a tree. And you think that's only on television. It's not. It really happened.
Yes.
But they did.
Everybody loves the fireman.
Exactly. So one thing I'm not gonna go over the whole detail in the book here, but you start talking about Scalia's death. The Supreme Court justice, and you say in there that you believe there probably you believe there was don't believe there was any foul play. Okay, you
Right.
say that up front. But you go on with a sentence that says, but the lack of proper investigation was evident. I bring that up because whether it be Scalia's case or any other case, the point I want to make out of this is a proper investigation. Joe, I cannot tell you the number of cases that I've seen, and some of them I get sent to consult on and I read about and write an opinion about. They weren't investigated. The reason me and you and other people are having to go back and get hired as a consultant is because the person who originally did it didn't investigate it. They
Right.
didn't do it properly. Speak into that just for a moment on what we need to make sure we do when it comes to
Right.
that.
Well, the first thing is to have a proper mindset. And one of the things I put in the book is that treat every death as if it's suspicious until proven otherwise, period. Nothing is clearly a suicide. Nothing is clearly homicide. Nothing is clearly anything until you've gotten your scene investigation done. You've taken your photographs. You talked to a couple of people. You don't take anything for granted. I mean, when I look at the Scalia case, and if you look at the Scalia case, and I matched up to the Prince case, right? You have one in Minnesota and you have one in Texas. Totally two different investigations, right? Here you have a Supreme Court justice. They got the guy back to his home and cremated within 24 hours. And then we hear all these things about pillows over his face and all this other stuff. Prince investigation goes on for months. We waited for toxicology reports. We waited for all the different things, right? So if you look at the two different places where this happened, same country, totally two different investigations. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's. There's no shortcuts. This isn't a playground. You get to say do over and start this up. If people really pushed the Scalia investigation, I mean, we could have turned it into a major conspiracy theory. It could have been a real big headache for the American people. But you know what? I mean, these are the things that happen every day in this country. We need a national standard on how death investigations should be done. And I consistently refer to them as death investigations because, once again, you can't have that preconceived notion that it's a murder, that it's a suicide, that it's natural causes, because I could tell you horror stories on every one of those where it turned out to be something different. So you don't take anything for granted. Do your proper scene investigations. Snap your photos, because the last thing you want to hear is somebody at the morgue calling you up and say, hey, do you know this guy has 2 bullet holes in his chest? No. I mean, you don't want to hear that, and that's already happened quite recently.
Right. And I teach a class on doing an external body exam, and there's some places around the country because, like you said, there needs to be a standard of death investigation, and there's not, although it is coming, and the nation is working on that. And in some of this terminology, I talk about an external exam. Well, I'm not talking about a forensic external exam like at post, like an autopsy, but on the scene. And death investigators run in and run out. Again, when you don't do an exam on the scene, you're not going to know about those bullet holes because you ship them off to wherever, and all of a sudden someone else calls you. There's a knife in grandma. There's bullet holes. That's a real problem.
Yeah.
And in your book, you talk a little bit about spend some time on determining time of death. And you have an acronym, TIM, time of death, identity of victim, and then manner of death, all of which are extremely important. And I want to park for a second on determining time of death.
Mm-hmm.
In the issue of the standardization of death investigation, I'm surprised as I travel around the country how much differences we have in how the police and the medical examiner's offices or coroner's offices work together. There are some that I go to that have a really good relationship. They work it together, Joe. And then there's some that I go to where so the police go in and they, it could be 7, 8, 9 hours before the medical examiner investigator is allowed to go in. The problem is, and again, there's so many differences, but you're wanting to determine time of death and things like that. Well, the medical examiner, investigator, coroner is the one that's going to do more of the lividity and the body temperatures and looking at wounds and doing things like that. The police don't normally do that. So, and neither do your CSI people, right? So they're really not touching the body, right? The body, don't touch the body. That's the coroner, that's the medical examiner. However, we're not going to let the coroner or medical examiner in here, by God, because this is our scene and we're the police, and they ain't coming in until we, by God, say so. 9 hours later, when you let her into the scene, she's supposed to give you time of death. Well, decomposition has advanced to the point now where her time of death is going to be way off. You, as a detective, are going to say, I need time of death. I need time of death. I need to check alibi. Well, I've been in the car 9 hours. I don't know what you want me to tell you now because you haven't let me to the body. You know, I say, let them in, let them get to the body, let them take the initial photographs, the initial things. If you want them to back out, back them out. But time of death is critical. And yet some departments keep their investigators out for many hours. I don't know about New York per se, but I know it happens all over.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely. See, we work it really here as a team. Medical legal examiner. And as a matter of fact, there were many times we were at the crime scene, we wait for the MLI to show up and we'll go in together. I mean, you got to remember, most of the MLIs, depends on what state you're in, are nearly doctors. So they know a lot more than we do. I mean, I was self-taught. I learned about all these things. I wanted to do this. And that's why one of the reasons why I wrote this book, and to encourage people to read it. Say, Joe, do I really have to know when lividity starts? Yes, you do. Because it's going to help you determine the postmortem interval, or what we just call the estimated time of death. It is extremely important because when you're dealing with this, remember, you're dealing with 3 timelines: the perp's timeline, the victim's timeline, and the investigative timeline. And as the investigative timeline develops, you want to see where the perp's timeline and the victim's timeline cross, because that's when your murder pretty much happened. And then when you're talking to people, and that's how you start breaking alibis or killing the alibi person or whatever it may be, because you pretty much have it narrowed down. You did your homework. And yeah, this is a team sport. This isn't a singular thing. I mean, no detective in the world can go out and say, I'm going to solve this case all by myself. And if they do, there's something wrong with you. The idea behind this is to be able to get as much information as you can, get it out there on the street, whether it is through your Crime Stoppers, your informants, whatever it may be, to help you try to solve this case. The idea is to close it as fast as you can, because the longer it goes, the less likelihood you're going to solve it. It's just as simple as that. So working hand in hand with the MLI or the medical examiner or the coroner, whoever, is paramount. And I'm a firm believer in that. I wrote about it. I think that it has to be that way. And I hope that whenever they come out with these national strategies, they talk about this partnership or this team concept and how we're supposed to do this together. Because listen, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to screw it up. And I want to be able to get some information. I mean, I had a very good relationship with the medical examiners and the MLI people. And this is another thing. I mean, go out to lunch with these people. Sit down and talk to them over a cup of coffee and explain to them. Have them explain to you about the different aspects of it. Yeah, here's an idea. Go out and get a book about it. Read about it. There's a lot of good books out there, like the Medical Legal Death Investigation textbook, by Spitz and Fisher. You start with that one. I mean, that's like the Bible of MLI. I mean, every homicide detective should read that, because the changes in the body, the different things that can happen, are extremely important, because when the day is over, you have to prove means, opportunity, and motive. And that opportunity is the hardest out of all 3 of them, because means anybody can kill anybody, right? I mean, and a motive could be anything. Love, money, drugs, being married is motive, I mean, these are just the different aspects of it. So when it comes down to it, opportunity is where it is, and you have to be able to prove it.
Well, right. And, when you talk about MLIs having the standards are coming, and they are coming, and they are changing, which I think, of course, is good. I think it needs to be, because there are some that aren't as well trained as others. And I think as the standards move forward, you're going to see that there'll be more and more cooperation. But the police have to start, and the coroners have to start with this cup of coffee concept. And of course, I talk about that quite a bit, and it's very true. But without the MLI, whether it be and then you got the medical examiner as a final results or whatever, coroner, you don't have a homicide unless I say so, right? So. Yep. You can say all day long someone got shot, but if I rule it a suicide, now we all know we should work together and our determination should be together. But ultimately, if it's my job to determine cause and manner, and I determine it as an accident, your homicide's out the window. Or if you're dead set on it being an accident and I come in and rule it a homicide and write my report to reflect it, guess what? You now have a case on the board, right?
Yeah, or God forbid, undetermined.
Yeah, or
which is the worst.
Right.
Yeah, that's worse than hearing decaffeinated coffee. As an investigator, there's two things you never want to hear. This death is undetermined, and would you like a cup of decaf? I mean, those are the two things that cops never want to hear.
You're so true. Yeah, exactly. But so there again, a good point of why we need to work together. So let me move forward here. There's a few things here that I'm really interested in. In your death investigation section, you talk about a sharp eye for bugs. Now, one thing that I really like about your book is that there's a lot of acronyms. You are the king of acronyms. But, however,
some people hate them. Some people hate them.
Yeah, and some, I can see that. But when you're just dealing with certain sections, they really help, because when you are trying to remember something, it certainly does help. So a sharp eye for bugs. And what this is for the death investigator, police, MLI, whatever, Rigor Mortis, you need to know the body temperature. That's the A. What is the body temperature? Again, MLIs take that, not the police. I deal with a lot. I've been on both sides of the fence, but now I'm dealing more on the coroner side. I've asked a lot of police to give me liver temps, and I won't tell you what they said because this is a family show, but they don't like taking liver temps, right? So, that's fine, but that needs to be done sooner than later. Again, the longer you leave your investigator from the scene, the less likely you're going to have a good accurate temperature. Now, it's not like NCIS. I like Ducky, okay, but he can't come stick a thermometer in your side and say that you died at 248. All right, that doesn't happen. It's a time frame, but that's the first one. And then of course we have scene markers. Now, scene markers are important. Talk for just a minute on the S here. Scene markers.
Sure, this is things that a lot of people even overlook. The mail in the mailbox. When was the last time it was picked up? The newspaper that's sitting on the table. When was the last time you do that? The milk in the refrigerator. These are all things that can clue you in on the last time this person was alive. I mean, it's not going to give you a definitive time, but you know what? When you're speaking to neighbors and they say, Mr. Jones left the house every morning at 7 a.m. and bought the newspaper, so you go through the newspapers and the only newspaper he had was the day before. So now you know that this guy never got out of the house before 7 a.m. So it kind of zones you in on a specific area. Is it 100% accurate? No. But you got to remember, all of these things together is going to give you a better sense of when this person died. All right, unless he was in a hospital, hooked up to a machine, and there's a doctor in the room, you're never going to know the exact time of death in any case. I don't care what you tell me or how you tell me or what TV show says exactly. Yeah, he died at 9:08 a.m., right? The real answer is when did he die? The last time he was still alive, and the last time, and he was found this morning. He died sometime in between that. Can you be any more specific? No, I can't. I mean, that's basically what you're really dealing with in the real world. So, the scene markers become important. And a lot of the things that we just overlook sometimes, you step over the newspaper when you're walking up the front step. You don't look in the mailbox at it. And you just, these are the kind of, remember, oriented toward details. Those little things can help you out or help solve a case.
Right. And that, again, what you said, the details. The neighbor statements are important because you always have a nosy neighbor somewhere, unless they live way out in the county somewhere. You always have somebody that knows they're coming and going. And so scene markers are very important. And then, of course, the next on this here, SH, sharp, is liver mortis. You put
hypostasis.
Hypostasis, which is liver mortis and lividity, for those that don't understand that term. But the lividity, the lividity is usually, it's got a fixed time frame. Mm-hmm. Now, let me caveat that, of course. Body mass, temperature, clothing, things like that can speed up or slow down. But for the most part, it's pretty consistent. But then the deal is it consistent with body position? You find somebody with liver mortis on their back and they're laying face down, you've got a problem. The body's been moved. And so the police and the MLI both have to, the MLI probably understands that more, but the police needs to understand that, because they need to understand that this is a problem. This is a moved body. And if the police move a body, which we all know that they would never do, somebody needs to be there to tell that MLI, I rolled that guy over, because they're going to get there and think, we got to move his body. Well, because the police didn't tell us.
And then they say, well, we better move it back before they get here. Now we really got a problem.
Yeah, just leave it alone. Yeah, exactly.
Don't touch it. Here's an idea. Don't touch it.
Yeah, and don't be moving guns or knives. If you've got a secure crime scene, then that dead guy is not going to shoot you. Okay. Now, if you're in the middle of the street, you got people
those are different
everywhere.
Stories.
I get it. Okay. But if you're in a bedroom somewhere and you've got enough police officers to stand at the door, don't be moving guns.
Yeah, I'll just tell you a quick story. That when I was a rookie cop, I remember that we had a homicide out on the street, and the guy's wedding ring had fallen off his hand somehow, and it was in the street. And I remember the sergeant grabbed me, pointed to the ring, and said, "You see that? You stand right here. If that disappears before we come and collect it, just go to JFK Airport. Don't come back." Simple as that. So I stood there for like hours staring at this ring, making sure, going bleary-eyed, making sure it didn't go anywhere. So, yeah, no, listen, things can happen in the street. But, if you're in, like I said, a secure scene inside a house, there's no reason to touch anything. There's not time to smoke a cigarette and have a sandwich or, raid the refrigerator. Oh, yeah, look, I'm going to go for scene markers. Hey, look, he's got an extra, orange juice in here. He's not going to need it. These are the kind of things that have happened in the past, and we want to avoid them. Would cops do this? Yeah, of course they do. This is just human nature. People do some stuff, they don't think about it until it's too late.
Well, and just you talking about being in scenes, smoking in scenes, and doing things that can contaminate the scene. Yeah, cops do it. Cops do it. But and covering the body up. Again, if you're in the middle of the street and you have like barriers you can put up or something like that. But in a house, especially when you just go into the living room or the hall closet, let's say, and let's get a blanket and cover her up because she's in the middle of the living room floor. Let's cover her up.
No, nope.
The list of problems that you've just caused because of that, I don't know if I read it, I don't know how I know it because it's not my personal case, but I was in somehow I read it or whatever. But a lady, a gal was killed. The suspect. There was a pubic hair with her that was his. He said he hadn't been around near or with her for months. Well, a cop had taken a sheet out of the bathroom closet and covered her up in her living room floor. The point is the defense was eager to say the reason why that pubic hair was there was because, well, it must have just been on her sheet because they were involved months ago. Mm-hmm. Completely tore up a scene. So anyway, we keep sidetracking. Adipocere, which is the graying and the kind of moldy look you get on the body. That's usually in pretty moist areas. The body's been there for a while before you see that. But if you do see that, you need to know what that is. It's sometimes called grave wax, things like that. Depends on.
Yeah, it's rare. It's rare. If somebody tried to bury a body and only got half buried or whatever, you could see something like that. Right. Or if it's in a cave. Or if it's in
a cellar. I've seen them if they're in like a fruit cellar where it is pretty damp down there, you're going to get that type, so you'll know what it is. And of course, rigor mortis, again, just like lividity, rigor mortis sets in. Now, here's something that's a little bit confusing. Rigor mortis sets in the muscles at the exact same time. However, you can see it quicker in the small joints in the jaw and things like that. Right. It isn't that your fingers and your jaws actually come into rigor mortis first. It's just because the muscles are smaller, you'll notice it there first. That's a confusion that some new MLIs have. They're thinking that it takes longer to show up, but the chemical process is occurring throughout the body, at the same time. But that's the whole point to know about that is it setting in? Is it +1, +2? How do you figure that? Each agency has a little bit different. Or is it releasing? Because, Joe, you and I both know that after a while it releases, which means, now you're limber again. Also, if I come along and break that rigor because I'm moving the body around, it will not go back into rigor. So is it releasing because I moved you and released the rigor, or is it releasing just because it's been long enough? And investigators need to know that. Police and MLIs need to know how rigor sets in and how it releases.
Certainly. And that's the biggest problem too. I mean, that's why I put the bell curve in the book, because for an investigator, you don't know if, like you said, he's going in or coming out of it. And that's why all these other pieces of the puzzle have to be done so that you can make a better educated guess about what's going on. And I use that term not loosely. I use it, educated guess, because that's what you're doing here. Right. There's nothing that's definitive in it.
No, that's exactly right. And, if you understand lividity, then if your lividity is fixed, well, and then you can again, not everything's perfect, but you can more likely say that rigor is starting to come out than go in if lividity is fixed, because the lividity has been there longer, so it's probably coming out. I'll go a lot of factors there, but yes, if you understand it all, then it certainly helps. And then, of course, body temperature. If you've got a body temperature that's pretty well ambient with the room, Well, again, that's longer.
Yep.
If you've got a body temperature that's still 98 degrees, now why do we have this or why do we have that? So yeah, we need to understand all those. And of course, putrefaction, that is the decomposition process.
Right.
Talk about that just for a second.
Yeah, well, the decomposition starts in the the belly area, right, the stomach, where all the enzymes and all of the we break down our food and stuff. It starts there, and then the stomach gets this greenish color, and the body starts to swell because all the methane gases build up. So yeah, that's why we have sometimes bodies will pass gas and all those other things. One of the other nice things about rigor mortis, right, that every now and then you can have that the cadaver could just sit up. I've been there and, almost killed myself trying to get out of the house while the guy just went, sat up, and I was trying to get, gone. But, this is just something these are the things that happen to it. So, yeah, putrefaction, decomposition is an important part of it because once that really starts, everything else kind of gets thrown out the window. So, yeah, I mean, once you see decomposition, you know that all of the other factors are really not going to help you out, right? The lividity, the rigor mortis, all that stuff, because now the body is just totally breaking down and, there's different rules on that too. Like, so how long it could take depends, like you said, where it is. Somebody's dead out in the desert in Death Valley, or somebody's up in, in Siberia. There's two different things that are going to happen at this time. It's going to slow down. So yeah, it depends on how cold it is or how hot it is, how much clothing they were worn, if they were sick or not, right? I mean, if somebody was running 103 fever, well, if we take their body temperature, well, if we base it on 98.6, which is the general normal, then we're already off 5 degrees plus. So this is another factor that has to be brought in.
Which, if they not only do they sick had a fever, also if they're on medication, there's a lot of medication that after you die, then it reacts to is a chemical process that rises your body temperature. Well, then that will speed up the rigor mortis and decomposition process. So they look like they've been in decomposing longer than they really have because they were hot to begin with. Throw a heavy coat on them or a waterbed and a down comforter, not speaking from experience here, they decomp a whole lot faster in a heated waterbed. So, those things do, of course, play a big factor. And then, of course, eye fluid. Again, we're talking about sharp eye for bugs. So eye is eye fluid. Now, the vitreous tells us a lot. Not only does we know the potassium level goes up during decomposition process, but also it is the best indicator of drugs and alcohol because it's avascular. I guess your ME New York probably uses vitreous a lot in their determinations.
Well, like everything else, for investigators, the reason why I've included in that, even though a lot of people have never heard of it. And that's one of the things. I mean, this is something that is done by the ME, and you might have to ask the ME, depends on where you live, to do the test, because like we know, every test costs money. So there might be locations where money is an issue, and if you're having a real difficult time with the time of death, this is one of the most accurate ways that we can help determine it. So this is something that every investigator should know about, that it exists. This is not what an investigator is going to do per se, but at least they know about it and they can ask the MLI and say, hey, what do you think about doing the vitreous test on this? And they might recommend that. So this is just another tool in the investigator's toolbox, and to help determine the cause of death. And I don't think there's going to be any medical examiner that's going to turn you down to do this test.
Right, and I teach investigators how to draw their own fluids. Now, again, we're dependent on each agency.
Right.
But in small areas, small medical examiner's office, coroner's office, sometimes they have to draw their own fluid. If you drew your own vitreous, okay, you can store that. You can refrigerate that and store that for a long time. So let's say you have a decedent that you're not sending to autopsy, but you have a reason that you want to draw blood for toxicology. Draw blood, draw urine, draw vitreous humor from the eye. Like you said, it costs money to test everything. But in our situation, if we're just going to do tox, we use the blood for tox. Once they determine something in the blood for toxicology, they will use the urine to back it up. If they don't have the urine, they can't back it up. But two-factor elimination is better than one. Our labs store all of that for up to a year. If I wanted to come back later and have a time of death determination from the vitreous, it's there. I didn't necessarily have them test it today, but they're storing it for me with everything else.
Yep.
Plus, you only get one shot to draw it. However, something unique about vitreous that some investigators don't know is that it will survive the embalming process and can still be drew and used because it's avascular. There's no blood to it. So as long as the funeral director didn't puncture the eyes in some way, after the embalming process, or even 2 or 3 days into decomposition, where the blood is no good, the vitreous can still be used. That's something a lot of investigators probably don't realize. And here, see, this paid for the whole cost of the free show right here was to learn that.
Well, absolutely. Everything. Listen, we can all learn something from somebody. And as all the new forensic technology that's coming out, I mean, this is something where if you're an investigator today, it's very exciting about some of the new technologies that are going to help you solve these cases.
Oh, they're already using it in some places, but even smaller places within another couple of years will be able to do on-the-scene DNA testing. It's there. It's possible. It only takes minutes. What takes a long time for DNA is to stand in line for you to get tested. It isn't that it takes a long time to do it. It takes a long time to get to it. So there'll be times that we can find DNA within an hour at the scene. And then the next part of this, of course, is bugs, and that's the entomology part.
Yep.
A lot of investigators don't do a lot with entomology. And if you can bring a forensic entomologist to the scene, that's fine. You can't always. But, Joe, it's important to understand the entomology process, right?
Certainly, absolutely. And the reason why I had it even included in this is because from my own personal experience, we had a lot of homicides going back in the day where you thought it was actually rat poop that was on the floor and you just totally disregarded it. And until, when you really start getting involved in this and then somebody points something out to you and then the light bulb goes on, those shells were, the flies and the maggots and the shells that came out. And then you start researching and the blowfly and the beetles. Those are the two most common bugs that you're going to have to know about. But just to understand that there's a definitive life cycle of the blowfly where pretty much it is one of the most accurate times that you can actually, you can bet money on. And those little shells have to be taken. It's part of the crime scene. And this is going to help you. So like I said, I mean, we just totally disregarded it because we didn't know. It was about ignorance. So the best thing about ignorance is that you can fix it. And you can talk to people and learn things. And then learn how this gets properly packaged, and then talk to entomologists. I mean, even if you don't have one at your local medical examiner because you work in a small town, reach out to a local university. They have them. They're everywhere. Just here's this idea. There's a thing called the internet. Go on there and do a search. You might be surprised about who's living in your neighborhood or teaching in your town that could help you or provide some insight so you can learn about this.
Right. But, if you don't have a forensic entomologist and I say forensic because that's important for the forensic entomologist, from your local ME or from the college or somewhere, if the investigator an investigator can learn to collect entomology evidence. They can learn. You can get the kits. You can even make your own kits. And as long as you do it right, but you have to collect certain samples of maggots from certain sections and the sizes, and of course what you thought was rat crap turns out to be the poop, the pupas, the eggs, the shells that's left. Some of them can be in the dirt, some of them can be near the walls, on their carpets, things like that. Are you going to collect those? And then not only do you have to collect the maggots that are that you can put in alcohol or you can, there's two ways, or boil or whatever. Also, you need to keep some alive. And how do you collect them? How do you create this maggot motel so you can keep them alive? And then you can actually send that. Maybe you got to send that to Texas A&M, but you can send that down there and have them forensic entomologists do what you need done. But you have to collect it the right way at the scene before you can send it off. That's not hard to learn. You can learn how to collect it, then send it to the people that know what to look at, but package it correctly.
Yeah, we're not looking to turn every investigator into a scientist. We don't have to. We have people that do that job, that dedicated their lives to studying and passing exams and learning about this stuff. As an investigator, you just have to be able to identify it, package it correctly, and get it to the right person. That's it, like basically in a nutshell. Right. And that's all we want you to do. We don't want you to do anything more than do your job.
Right. We're the CSI person on the scene. They're not making ballistic matches. They're not looking at tool marks on the casing. They're collecting them and sending them to the firearms expert. So all we're saying here is you need to learn, somebody in your department needs to learn entomology. So you're not collecting shell casings, you're collecting maggots and sending it to the proper scientist. And it's not hard. It's not hard to do. But people shy away from it because they don't want to learn it. So,
well, they don't know. They don't recognize it.
That's right. They don't know. Right.
That's it.
Yeah, let's knock these maggots off here so we can bag up this body and get out of here. And then you've lost a good time frame. Because like, one thing you said that I want to point out again, the blowfly has a very specific life cycle based upon temperature. And if you can just track to know that temperature, a blowfly knows when something has died nearly immediately.
Yep.
Now, if it's inside a closet, inside interior room of a house, sealed windows, it takes a little longer. But if you're in an open house, windows, or you die out in the middle of the park or whatever else, a blowfly knows immediately, and that's nature's way of starting the cleanup process. And so the eggs are laid, the maggots hatch at a specific time frame based on temperature, and it is so specific that alibis have been made and lost based upon a maggot.
Yep, and it's a very important. And then who comes next? The beetles. Why? Because they like to feast on the eggs of the fly. So I mean, this is all nature. Listen, it's been doing this for billions of years. Why, as investigators, are we just discounting it as a viable form of helping us determine when somebody died or not? It's amazing to me. That's why I wanted to include it in the text.
Right. No. And you did an amazing job. And we're running close on time here, Joe, but I'm going to tell you that Criminal Investigative Function, 3rd edition. Like I said, I have the 2nd edition. I was honored to get the 3rd edition. It is an amazing book. And like I said, it's easy to read. You don't have to have it as a textbook. But if you're an instructor out there somewhere and you want to teach the class, whether you bring it into your college class or whether you want to just be teaching it on your own, you have teaching resources, don't you, Joe? Besides what's in the book, don't you have a
certainly? Yeah, yeah. I did questions at the end of every chapter. Even I added this time around about research questions. But any instructor who picks it up for either adoption or using it at a police academy. And they use it in New Jersey civil service exams for years for police promotion to sergeant, lieutenant, and captain. You get there's a DVD now that goes with it that's all your PowerPoints. And it just makes it easy for people to adopt it, to get this thing up and running. And then what you could do is I do like a little information kind of thing on there. It says, add your own photos to it, to help further along with the learning process. The original text that came out in December of 2010 had 0 illustrations and 0 pictures. The 2nd edition was the first one I had it. And then the 3rd edition with people like you that helped me out with even the death scene pictures, the rigor mortis, and all those other things that I didn't have, to include those pictures and add it. I have medical examiners that gave me stuff this time around because as the book is becoming more popular, more and more people want to get involved, which kind of makes me excited because this is not an individual project. I need the help of people like yourselves and all kinds of forensic experts that have helped me to put this together to make a book that is, that people can rely on to get themselves started. That's why I called it for new investigators. Yeah, can somebody who's been doing this for 10 years pick up some clues? Sure. But this is really for the guys and girls that are just starting out or those students that want to learn about it. And I'll tell you, the one group of people I never imagined would be a home run for me would be the crime writers. They really take a big liking to the text. And like everything else, Darren, and you know this, after you write something, or you always find a typo here and there. So I'm still finding typos, even after it's been edited by people who are a lot smarter than me. You still find these things. So as we're going through the first printing of the 3rd edition, we'll try to get some of those things cleared up for you too.
Right. Well, that happens, and one of the things that you mentioned early on that I wanted to recap on, you're talking about this book you wrote is it's not all statistical. It's not all full of fluff and data. It's concise and it's to the point. And the few investigative books I've written is that way. They're smaller, but they're for one thing: autoerotic fatalities or suicide investigation. All the statistics and all the fluff and all that's great. That's great for some textbooks. But when you want to learn how to do the job, then let's read about that job. And that's what this book is. It's the investigative function. This book, and I forget how many pages it is here, 306, almost 375, something like that.
Yeah, 78, I think, yeah.
All dedicated to the specific job of criminal investigation. It's concise, and every single page has information about the process. And I know I'm spending just a second here, bragging about it, but it was amazing to me that there isn't a lot of filler. Yes, there's pictures, but the pictures are small on the page to make the point. It's
right.
Not the whole page. because every page is full of information. That was my point. Every
Yeah.
single page. And there isn't but like maybe 3 or 4 blank pages in here because of the way the chapters run. There's like 3 or 4 blank ones because of the way the publisher had to do the chapter set. My point is, you got 375 pages of good text here that any investigator can pick up and learn. And I enjoyed. I'm glad that I was able to be a part of it. But in the show notes today, of course, the title of this is going to be the Criminal Investigation Function, and there's a link to learn more about you and the book there. So any of our listeners that wants to go check that out can. And of course, I'll have some your public contact information from you if they want to reach out to you.
Sure.
And so any last things you want to say to our listeners? What would be something you would leave us with to be thinking about our investigation?
Yeah, just make sure when you show up on these death scenes that you don't get a second chance to do it right the first time. This way, we don't have to worry about leaving these things for cold cases. And listen, last year we had a very bad year for case clearances in the United States. We dropped down to 61.5%, which added another 6,000 cold cases alone. And the stats for 2016 look even worse. So my best advice is go to these scenes, be prepared, be detail-oriented, and be determined so that we don't leave a whole generation of cops behind us with cases that they can't solve.
Yes. Very, very good point. Very good point. Joe, again, thank you very much for being on the show, pouring in and helping our listeners learn today as well.
No, thanks, Darren. Anytime.
Okay, Joe.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Hold on one second here. So those of you that are watching the video section in Patreon, I thank you very much for that. We're going to end the video portion of it now. And again, thank you very much for being a patron and coming and supporting the show there. So until next time, everybody, thank you. See you soon.